we'll move straight to our next lecture. Wish to welcome again Professor Paul Bukuluki from Makerere University in Uganda. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for organizing such a wonderful session. And I would like also to re-echo my colleagues' positive feedback to the previous presenter, that really being able to showcase our cultural resources and how they contribute to solving our problems in Africa is extremely important. So I'm equally very happy with the presentation. And I think we should continue to do that. I've been introduced, so I will not be introducing myself anymore because that has been done. Thanks for the invitation to speak to this audience of social workers and other stakeholders about Ubuntu and how and the nexus between social norms and the Ubuntu and social work. So whenever I think about Ubuntu, I just reflect on my own childhood, even before I knew anything about social work, that, you know, good neighborliness, and we had many proverbs that talked about the fact that you should really have harmonious relationships with your neighbors, even beyond your family. And that actually within your home, there is no road in your home. Whoever comes to your home is a visitor and treat them with respect, irrespective of who they are. So this Ubuntu, which we see in many of African countries, I think, is the very basis of the spirit of being an African. And I think I would like to say bravo and kudos to whoever has started to put a professional lens to the Ubuntu as a resource in our research, teaching, and training of social workers. But because we are speaking about social norms, I wanted to start by defining what norms are, because I believe that even the Ubuntu we talk about rests right within our culture. It is defined by our culture. It is defined by the way we relate to each other and the way we relate to each other as human beings. These are relationships between women and men, neighbors, neighbors, the way we relate within the various institutions, whether it is schools or health facilities or name it, they are all regulated by norms. So it is hard to imagine Ubuntu without thinking about its normativity. But what are norms? So some scholars have attempted to define norms, and there are quite a number, including Hasey, Ben Sislage, Bicheri, name them. They come from different schools of thought, but there is a general agreement that a norm is an unwritten behavior rule shared by members of a given group or society. And this helps us sort of to distinguish between a norm and an attitude. An attitude is something conceptualized as personal, something personal to the individual. However, when you talk of a norm, it must be shared by either a group, so there could be group subcultures with their norms and standards, or shared by society. And when a norm is widely accepted within a much larger society, say a whole region in Zimbabwe, or a whole region in Malawi, in Zomba, that one you can say that it is a meta norm because it is widely accepted by a much wider group of people. It qualifies to be what we call meta norms. But just also to note that norms are influenced by belief systems and perceptions of what others expect and do. So there is always this issue of what you believe others do is likely also to influence what you do. And part of this is because you want to belong. So you want to make sure that the way you behave, the decisions you make are aligned to your group, sometimes beyond your group, aligned to the community or society where you live. But it is also about what you believe others approve or disapprove. So you are likely to behave in a certain way or uptake a certain behavior based on what you believe others you relate with approve or disapprove, what they consider appropriate or inappropriate. So this is very important to understand, and in the context of social work, it is extremely important because we might engage people to try out new behaviors, whether these are in respect to nutrition or mental health, or they are in respect to sexual and reproductive health, or peaceful coexistence. But then these people are going to make judgments based on what they believe others do or what they believe is approved or disapproved by others within their group or community. So knowing our context, the context of our clientele is extremely important. But also very important to note about norms is that they are held together by rewards and sanctions. It's a reference, what we call a reference group. People whose opinion count. Dr. Mgumbate, you might have people in your life whom you value and whom you perceive that if they approve your decisions, you would feel happy about it. So this kind of reference group at the same time can reward or can sanction you for not adhering to norms. So if you adhere to the norms, you are rewarded. But if you are seen to be violating a certain norm in a group or society, you are likely to be sanctioned or punished. And so there is likely to be pushback. So we try out interventions, but sometimes we don't imagine that there will be pushback, particularly for the early adopters, and we don't go ahead and create a support ring to enable the early adopters to cope with trying out new norms, new behaviors, and so on. And especially in developmental social work, where we do aim at promoting social change, this is extremely important because social change might come with some shifts in norms. That said, one of the important things to note is that actually norms are nested within formal and informal institutions, and of course they are reproduced through platforms for people to interact, so through socialization agents, if one might say so. One important thing, of course, to note is that norms can either be positive or negative. There are very many positive social norms, for example, linked to Ubuntu. But we also have to be very critical to see are there harmful social norms that are also promoted by Ubuntu, and therefore, when people try to stand out and challenge these norms, then they face severe social sanctions. So I think as academia, we need to be just more critical to harness the positive social norms, build on them as assets, like you said, the tree of life, but also look at more pause and reflect sessions where we think about are there certain harmful social norms that could, hinder people exercising their agency at individual and group level, simply because if you are seen to challenge what is predominant in terms of holding the community together, but you feel it is not aligned to you as a person or as a group, you are likely to face severe social sanctions. Just also, I invite people to appreciate the fact that within the broader categorization of social norms, there is also what is called gender norms. And basically, these are norms that regulate relationships between men and women, and they are relative from one group or society to another. They could be temporal, they could be dynamic, but they play a role in shaping women and men's access to resources, freedoms, to voice, to power, to even self-esteem, self-worth, among others. So these norms, affect the power relations, access and control of resources, as well as even decision-making, among others. We consider those to be sort of a subset, if you want, of the broader social norms, but very important norms, because they talk about relationships between men and women that are socially and culturally constructed, that could be relatively permanent or more dynamic and temporary, depending on the context. I think I spoke about this, the difference between a social norm and an attitude. An attitude is relatively more personal, so you could say what I do, what I believe I should do. And more in terms of norms, compared to when you are speaking from the I perspective. And this is what I believe others do, and what I believe others think I should do is very important, especially in the context of Ubuntu, because we are talking about social cohesion. We are thinking about your humanness being seen in the other human being. I am because you are, and so on. So the interface then between social norms in Ubuntu seems to be relatively quite obvious. Moving on, just to also note that we should not look at norms as if they are existing in a vacuum. Norms are part of the system of structure factors that intersect to sustain action. So norms are just one of those other things to consider, but we should look at them as part of a broader social ecology, which has institutions, global factors, issues to do with that are more material, services, infrastructure, among others. So you could shift, but as long as not in, then you may not expect any major changes in people's well-being. That said, I would like to thank really Professor Mugumbate and the Chireni for really I read their article on Ubuntu, theorizing Ubuntu, and it was very instructive to me, where Ubuntu is conceptualized as a collection of values and practices that Black people of African origin view as making people authentic human beings, including, of course, also that appreciation of the cultural relativity of the Ubuntu values and practices, but all of which seem to show us that human beings are part of a larger significant relational, communal, societal, environmental, and spiritual world. And when we say spiritual world here, it is not just religion, it is that connection, that interconnectedness with the environment, the interconnectedness between the living and the living dead, because in our African philosophy, we believe the dead are not dead, the dead are living. So we don't see when people die that they have left, they have simply changed the form, but they are still part of us. So I think this conceptualization is very helpful, and it is what I'll be taking forward. And it reminds me of the conceptualization around collectivism by quite a number of scholars who tend to link Ubuntu to collectivism. And they say that in collectivism, an individual is obliged to contribute to the community, not only because it is expected of him or her, but because the community is him or her. I think this is the highest value of expressing Ubuntu, where you say that there is even no difference between the individual and the community, but the community is him or her. And then also, especially Verhoeven and Michael, when they said that the concept of personhood in the African collective worldview is first and foremost that of the community. This means not that the individual is selfless, but that the self is the community. So distinguishing the individual from the community in especially collectivistic societies, like those we have in many countries, like those we have in Zimbabwe, those we have in Kenya, those we have in Uganda, in Botswana, can be very different. Sometimes you are talking to an individual and you think you are talking to the individual, but actually the individual is embodying the community. And this is where the Cartesian thinking of I, that is Western, becomes challenging, because you think you are talking to an individual, but actually you are speaking to the community, because the individual, the community is him or her. This theorization is quite interesting for me. So the identity of an individual is not separate from the social cultural environment, as Economy says. And the notion of we are as the basis for defining the identity instead of I am is extremely important. So if you are working in such a context, Ubuntu is very important to understand, problematize, and take the positive attributes that Ubuntu brings, but also know that because we are talking of collectivism, it is possible that in the interest of social cohesion and people remaining together and cohesive, there might be separation of certain individual rights, or certain individual agents, individuals setting their own goals and converting those goals into action. Like our grandfather Tutu prefers to say, my humanity is intrinsically related to that of others, so we are interconnected. And Ubuntu as an African alternative, of course, the Cartesian thinking of I think, therefore I am, versus I am human because I belong. So what makes us human, particularly in the African context, I know it is royalty. When I use African, I need to put quotes because we are diverse, but the human because I belong is very strong, is a very strong philosophy in terms of moral and cultural perspectives. And again, learning from Mugumbate and Chireni, Ubuntu has a number of values which, in my opinion, are aligned to social work, reciprocity, sharing, respect, empowerment, promotion of respect for human dignity, because if you see your humanity in the other person, that also means you have empathy. And the empathy is very important for social work. I don't know if you can practice social work without thinking of empathy, putting yourself in your clientele's shoes and being able to understand them better, and also being more people-centered, person-centered, among others. Of course, also that comes with aspects around sharing of resources and inspiring collective progress and collective action. Now, as we talk about that Ubuntu, as we talk about social norms which regulate behavior, which are held together by reference groups, people whose opinion matters us a lot. We want them to judge us positively as much as possible, but also held together by social positive rewards, but also severe social sanctions and pushback if you are seen not to adhere to the norms. Is there space for exercising agency? And if we are talking for setting either individual goals or group goals and seeing them through, particularly sometimes when they may be breaking new ground, which other people think is not appropriate or is not approved and so on. But as we do that, maybe it is important to also think about what is agency and how does this relate to social work, of course, and how does agency either align with the Ubuntu as a resource for social work, or how does it challenge Ubuntu, or we see a hybrid between and actually agency. And if there is that relationship between Ubuntu and the agency, is it individual agency or we are speaking about collective agency that leads to collective action? So generally agency is nested in the process of empowerment. So it is one of those very important aspects of empowerment, which is generally, of course, described as a process by which individuals expand their aspirations, goals, and gain great autonomy, allowing them to achieve their goals. Incidentally, because this definition is coming more from a Western perspective, it is talking about individuals, but not talking so much in terms of individuals as groups and individuals who see themselves as part and parcel of the collective, of the community, individuals who feel that actually the community is them, and that there is no much distinction between the community and them. And sometimes that is where it can get challenging. And this is why promoting indigenization and framing of literature from an African cultural perspective is important. Some scholars define, of course, agency, but also do recognize the role of external factors, because when exercising agency, you are doing it within the perspective of person, but in environment, group of people, but in environment. And so external, negotiating with the external factors, which could be opportunity structures, but also which could be hindrances in terms of exercising agency of our clients, is extremely important. Some scholars have argued that the proxy measures of agency include political consciousness, that people are confident that they are able to, that they have self-worth, they have human dignity, and they are confident that they can do something about their situation, and that they have a voice to express their concerns, their aspirations, but also that they are able, they feel that they can set goals and feel that they can actually work towards achieving those goals, which is self-efficacy, and that they can act independently, but understanding that as they do act independently, there are repercussions, but they are ready to engage with the repercussions of taking action to solve their challenges, their issues or concerns. When our moderator was introducing, you did say that I'm a research director for Agents for All, which is a project where the concept of agency and norms is very dear. And here we have held several consultations to try and understand this concept of agency, and also try to challenge the Western more inclined individualistic notions of agency. But in the various consultations we have had, agency tends to come out as so you'll see even differences in conceptualization from the different consultations. But round one of the consultations tended to show that the agency is the ability to set preferences, intentions, and goals, and then act on them. Again, ability to, but as we moved further, there were other issues that were coming up. For example, looking at agency, bringing the concept of power at the center by saying agency is the power to create change based on increased capacities. So feeling that I can, and supported by actions and reactions. So can and resist, because you might start to act and then you face resistance, either from your group or community, because what you are doing is not in tandem with their norms and it is perceived negatively. But as you move along again, you see a trend that goes beyond individual. Say agency involves setting individual or collective goals based on awareness of choices, which is sort of critical consciousness, and then engaging in the process of negotiation with your social environment. It might be an environment of Ubuntu, it might be an environment of norms, of course, informed by internal and external resources. So the definition is still even evolving, but on the right, you see that agency involves individuals or groups being aware of their ability to make choices, setting individual collective goals, and taking action on those goals. And that these choices, goals, and actions are informed and affected by internal and external resources, which also, including, among others, social norms. So agencies such an interesting concept, and one basically, because in social work we really value the person in the environment, and we categorize the environment into several layers as per the social ecological model. We see there individual and collective action and empowerment, which sort of resonates to some extent with our collectivistic setting. But also we are thinking of, yes, one must have the critical consciousness, must have aspirations and conviction that they can and act, and they can resist in case they start on actions to achieve their goals, but there is resistance from the external environment until those goals are achieved. One agency in terms of that inner drive, if you are talking in terms of individual, but also going beyond that to look at the groups that come together. For example, it could be that women in a village saving and loans association set goals for themselves, quite aware of what they are doing, and then they seek collective action. And that would be collective agency. But also the capability to act, because you might have the will, but then you are lacking capabilities. So focusing on skills, abilities, resources, similar to the strengths-based perspective in social work, is important, but also that conscious decision to act on the intentions and translate them into action. But you see quite a strong nexus between norms and agency, because the social norms that I alluded to as unwritten rules that define acceptable, appropriate, and obligatory actions within a group or community, and that influence what people do and are expected to do, and that are held together with the positive and negative social sanctions or rewards that influence and affect choices, definitely are going to affect the ability of people as individuals, groups, or even communities to exercise action. So social norms can either, if they are positive norms, they can facilitate agency, but they could also constrain agency. That intentional independent choices made and the when and the capacity to be able to act could be really constrained. Just to give you an example, and the moderator tell me when it is 10 minutes to time, such that I can wrap up. Some examples here of the interface between norms, agents. And when I talk of norms, I'm also trying to set the context that Ubuntu operates in the context of norms. It is difficult to imagine Ubuntu values, Ubuntu behavior or actions being played out in a vacuum. They rest on norms. These could be positive norms that support human dignity, that give individuals a voice, but they could also be norms that constrain individuals' ability and groups' abilities to exercise setting goals and acting on their intentions to convert those goals into action. So let us assume that we are in a country like Guinea Conakry, where FGM, where 86% of the people practice FGM. And I'm not saying at this moment whether it is good or bad and so on, but I'm not putting judgments, but just using this as an example. So, for example, Jamal knows FGM is painful and probably unnecessary. He was determined not to let his daughter Aisha go through it. So that is the issue of will. In terms of capacity, Jamal was lacking in capacity. He did not have adequate information on the harmful effects associated with FGM and how to go about challenging the norm. Because actually, if you don't undergo FGM in Guinea Conakry, you can't marry. And it is through marriage that women can access any resources of production, and they can, find the protection, and so on and so forth. If you go to choice, Jamal decided to object to FGM for his daughter, so he's making a choice. However, he could not effectively convince the daughter's grandmother. Grandmothers are very important in most of the FGM practicing communities. He could not convince the grandmother and the mother to get the community leader to buy in. So you could make a choice, but the norms constrain your action if you don't have enough skills, capacity, and abilities, because there are these external constraints you have to deal with. So will and capacity does not always translate into action. Scenario 2, addition is ambivalent to the situation of his daughter. He's on the fence about it. And community intervention to reduce FGM conducts that meeting. Benefits from the intervention, and and now he's knowledgeable, among others. This was just an example. A study in Kenya among younger people agency, and they were able to, first of all, the struggle is always how do you conceptualize some of these concepts in the local language, such that people can even speak to you who don't understand English. So in doing this, we came up with a creative idea around thinking about good life, because everybody wants good life. I also want good life. And then younger people started to think through how one can exercise critical consciousness by thinking about what good life means to them, then start to set goals, explore the enablers and barriers, and then move ahead to start putting those into action. And so some of the enablers from younger people are these that are shown here, including, of course, things that are very important in terms of Ubuntu, like community and social support. But also some people talked about networks, having a good supportive right people around your mentorship, among others. I won't go into the details, but just to appreciate that there are always enablers, but there are also barriers. Agency, like you see also in this chart, bad peer influence could be an issue, yet within a peer group, there are always norms and standards set. And if you want to belong, you have either play or you are kicked out, and so on and so forth. Just in the interest of time, I'll continue. So,
Hi, Prof.
One of the interesting aspects.
Sorry, I forgot to inform you.
Yes, please.
At 10 minutes to your time. You are very close. If you could wrap up in the next 5 minutes, that would be great.
That is enough for me. Thank you. Actually, I'm towards the end. And then one of the challenging things about the concept of agency is the fact that it has been conceptualized from a more Western individual perspective. And when you come to a collective context where people, even when they feel that they are individuals, actually they have a very strong connection to family and the community, then it was like, how does then that agency look like? In the context, if you want to say of Ubuntu or of collectivism, what might this look like? And I'm using these concepts carefully because collectivism does not necessarily mean Ubuntu, but it is a very big part of Ubuntu. So what happened is that we started to speak to younger people again to try and understand how they imagine collectivism. And here they were talking more of being aware of the implications of setting individual goals and action on family, peers, and community, but also being able to negotiate individual and collective or shared goals, such that although there is collective effort, your individual aspirations are affected positively. And also there was a lot of aspects of giving back to family and the community as an important moral value when younger people were thinking about collective agency, but they did note that collective agency, there could be aspects of bad company that can affect your choices, and that collective agency is reinforced normally by norms, especially positive norms. So a delicate balance is extremely important. When I think about, again, Ubuntu and the norms and agency, of course, in the context of social work, some of the questions that come to my mind are, is Ubuntu held together by social norms? Are they always only positive norms, or there could be also harmful social norms? So in the context where there are positive social norms, yes, we can harness those because they align with the values of social work. But what if they are harmful social norms? What ethical dilemmas do we face as social workers when we are in the context of social cohesion, collectivism, and of course, Ubuntu is relative from one culture, society, family to another. And so if there is, how do we, for example, handle pushback and negative social sanctions in the context of social work? Collectivism may ignore the agents of the individuals, which could be a source for them to maneuver structures and norms. So how do we deal with that in the context of social work? And is there a relationship between collective agency and Ubuntu? Especially, does Ubuntu then offer room and self space to exercise collective agency as opposed to individual agency? How do we ensure that Ubuntu and norms do not twin to promote harmful norms that hinder individual agency by harnessing those positive values and aspirations of Ubuntu that align with social work? What dilemmas do we face when there is a clash between norms and social worker values that operate in the context of Ubuntu? So this has been extremely interesting to interact with you and about these very central concepts in the communities where we work as social workers. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Bukuluki, for your insightful presentation on Ubuntu social norms and agency. We'll now open this for questions. We have reached the end of our 2023 Ubuntu lecture, Fundo ya Ubuntu. Professor Bukuluki, thank you very much, as well as our previous and first speaker, Nkazelo. At this moment, I wish to call upon Professor Janestic Twikirize to thank you, Professor Bukuluki, to also thank the participants who have been here for the last 1.5 hours, and to provide closing remarks for this lecture. When the lecture ends, you will receive a survey. The survey will be about what you think now after having listened to two people talk about use of African knowledges, use of African models. Please contribute to that survey. Thank you, and over to you, Professor Twikirize.
Oh, thank you very much. I perhaps want to begin by thanking you, Rugare, so much for facilitating this, and also honestly for being the brain behind, the Ubuntu Research Group and the Ubuntu Annual Lecture, and also a very, very important resource, the website for the African Social Development Network. If you check it out, you won't exhaust the amount of resources that are on that website, and they keep coming. So thank you so much, Dr. Rugare. We really do appreciate your passion for promoting, indigenous, resources and development, in Africa. And we'd also like to thank our lecturers today, Nkazelo in absentia, and now Professor Bukuluki. In Uganda, we call him Professor Pragmatism, because he's so practical. He's always looking for solutions. He's not stuck on one path. So we are so privileged to have you speak to us about these very, very important concepts and helping us to think outside the box and also challenge ourselves as we promote Ubuntu, as we promote these indigenous knowledges and all that, to begin to be critical and, to self-assess and allow for different views so that we don't become, in your words, radical. Did you call it radical relativists or something like that? So we are so grateful for your insightful presentation on agency, on Ubuntu, and on social norms. And we hope that your lecture will be important when it's shared widely. I was also very pleased to see participants from a diverse range of contexts. My friend Jill, all the way from the UK, then participants from China, participants from India and Ethiopia, Wasi, Zena, and others. Thank you so much for coming. And for all those that I haven't mentioned, we see you and we appreciate your inputs. This is our second annual lecture, Last year we had one, and next year we shall have one. We have a research group that does more than an annual lecture. We have completed a survey. I hope some of you participated, and we are analyzing that, a survey on Ubuntu in social work education in Africa, and we are analyzing it, and we'll be getting out publications. And you could participate in these events and activities. All of you are welcome to be a part of this movement. Once again, thank